and when a human warrior gave his blood to save a dying alien princess. Marcus Chin had been fighting for 3 days straight when he found her. The battlefield stretched across the crystalline plains of Zephyria Prime, littered with the wreckage of both human and alien war machines. Smoke rose from countless craters where plasma weapons had carved deep wounds into the planet's surface. The war between the Terran Federation and the Catherian Empire had raged for 2 years, but this battle felt different, more desperate, more final. Marcus pressed his back against a fallen piece of debris, checking his rifle's power cell. Nearly empty. His combat suit's medical system had been patching him up for hours, but he could feel exhaustion creeping into his bones. Around him, the sounds of battle echoed across the plains. Laser fire, explosions, the screams of dying soldiers from both sides. He was a long way from home. Earth felt like another universe entirely, not just another planet. Marcus had grown up in the slums of New Detroit, where the only way out was through military service. The Terran Federation promised adventure among the stars, a chance to see worlds beyond imagination. They hadn't mentioned that most of those worlds would be trying to kill him. A soft sound caught his attention, not the harsh crack of weapons fire or the rumble of engines, but something else, something that sounded almost like crying. Marcus peered around the debris, scanning the area with his rifle's scope. There, about 50 meters away, was what looked like a damaged Catherian transport vessel. Its elegant curved hull was split open like a broken shell. Marcus knew he should call for backup, follow protocol, but something about the sound made him hesitate. It wasn't the aggressive war cry of a Catherian warrior or the tactical communications of their military. It sounded vulnerable, hurt. Moving carefully from cover to cover, Marcus approached the crashed ship. The closer he got, the more obvious it became that this wasn't a military vessel. The hull was made of some kind of iridescent material that shifted colors in the light, decorated with intricate patterns that seemed to move and flow like living art. This was a civilian ship, probably a luxury transport. The crying sound grew louder as he reached the breach in the hull. Marcus activated his suit's translation matrix and slipped inside. The interior was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Instead of the harsh, utilitarian design of human or Catherian military ships, this vessel was filled with flowing organic shapes and surfaces that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. It was beautiful and alien in a way that made his breath catch. Following the sound deeper into the ship, Marcus found himself in what appeared to be a medical bay. Sophisticated equipment lined the walls, but much of it was damaged, sparking and dark. In the center of the room, on a platform that might have been a medical bed, lay a figure that made Marcus forget everything else. She was clearly Catherian, but unlike any he'd seen before. Most Catherians were tall and angular, with skin that ranged from pale blue to deep violet. This one was smaller, more delicate, with skin that seemed to shimmer between silver and pearl. Her hair was long and white, spread across the medical platform like spilled starlight. But what caught Marcus's attention most was the deep wound across her torso, seeping a luminescent blue fluid that could only be Catherian blood. She was dying. Marcus had killed enough Catherians to recognize the signs. The way her breathing came in shallow gasps, the pale color spreading across her skin, the way her hands trembled as she tried to reach for something on a nearby console. She was maybe minutes away from death. Every instinct Marcus had screamed at him to leave. She was the enemy. Catherians had destroyed human colonies, killed millions of his people. This could be a trap. Even if it wasn't, helping her would be treason. But as he watched her struggle, something deeper than military training took over. She looked so young, so afraid. When her eyes found his through the medical platform's transparent barrier, Marcus saw not the cold intelligence of a Catherian warrior, but the terrified gaze of someone who knew death was coming. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the war ceased to exist. She said something in her own language, words that his translator rendered as, "Please and help me." Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He approached the medical platform slowly, hands visible, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. The Catherian woman watched him with wide eyes that shifted color like oil on water. Up close, he could see that she wore robes of some incredibly fine material, decorated with symbols he didn't recognize. Not military insignia, but something else, something important. "I'm going to try to help," Marcus said, hoping his translator would convey the meaning. "Don't be afraid." The medical equipment around the platform was mostly dark, but Marcus could see readouts displaying what were probably vital signs. They didn't look good. The wound across her torso was deep, and whatever had caused it had damaged something vital. Human first aid wouldn't be much use here. But as Marcus examined the medical bay more closely, he noticed something interesting. Some of the equipment was still functional, including what looked like an automated surgical unit. The problem was that it kept flashing an error message that his translator rendered as insufficient compatible biological material for emergency transfusion. Marcus stared at the message, his mind racing. Transfusion. The machine needed blood, or whatever the Catherian equivalent was. But it specifically said compatible biological material. How could human blood be compatible with an alien's biology? The woman spoke again, weaker now. His translator caught fragments. Royal, blood, ceremony, compatible. Royal blood. Marcus felt his understanding shift. This wasn't just any Catherian. The clothes, the ship, the way she carried herself even while dying, she was nobility, maybe even royalty. But what had she said about compatibility? As if reading his thoughts, the woman raised one trembling hand toward him. When she spoke, her words came through the translator with crystal clarity. Your people and mine. Ancient connection. Blood remembers. Marcus didn't understand what she meant, but the medical equipment seemed to. As he approached the platform, sensors began scanning him. And the error message changed to compatible donor detected, emergency transfusion protocol available. Looking down at the dying alien princess, because that's what she had to be, Marcus realized he was at a crossroads. Not just of the battle or even the war, but of something much larger. Something that could change the relationship between their species forever. The medical system was already extending flexible tubes toward him, waiting for his consent. All he had to do was agree, and his blood would flow into her veins. Human blood mixing with alien blood in a process that somehow, impossibly, could save her life. Marcus thought about Earth, about the billions of humans counting on soldiers like him to keep them safe. He thought about the Catherian attacks, the destroyed colonies, the friends he'd lost in this war. Every logical part of his mind told him to walk away, but he also thought about the look in her eyes, the way she'd asked for help instead of trying to kill him. He thought about what his grandmother had always told him, that sometimes the most important choices were the ones that made the least sense. "Okay," Marcus said, extending his arm toward the medical apparatus. "Let's see what happens." The machine moved with fluid precision, inserting a needle into his arm that he barely felt. Warm blood began flowing through the transparent tubes, mixing with alien technology in ways that should have been impossible. As his blood entered the system, the entire medical bay seemed to come alive with new energy. The princess's eyes widened as she watched the transfusion begin. She tried to speak, but Marcus shook his head. "Save your strength," he said. "We'll figure out what this all means later." Outside the ship, the sounds of battle continued, But inside this small medical bay, something unprecedented was happening. Human blood was flowing into alien veins, and somehow, against all logic and understanding, it was working. As Marcus watched the medical readouts begin to stabilize, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just changed the course of history. He didn't know how or why their blood was compatible, didn't understand what the princess had meant about ancient connections and blood remembering, but he knew that nothing would ever be the same. The transfusion continued, and slowly, color began returning to the princess's skin. Her breathing grew stronger, more steady. The wound across her torso began to close as alien medical technology worked its healing magic, powered by human blood that somehow fit perfectly into the process. Marcus felt dizzy as the machine took what it needed, but he held steady. This was bigger than the war, bigger than the hatred between their species. This was about connection, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they weren't as different as everyone believed. As consciousness began to fade from blood loss, Marcus saw the princess reaching toward him, her eyes bright with something that might have been gratitude or wonder, or perhaps something else entirely. The last thing he heard before darkness took him was her voice, speaking words his translator couldn't quite catch, words that sounded almost like a promise. When a human warrior gave his blood to save a dying alien princess, second document, Marcus woke to the sensation of floating. His entire body felt weightless, suspended in something warm and gentle that seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. For a moment he thought he might be dead, drifting in some peaceful afterlife. Then memory crashed back into him like a physical blow. The princess, the transfusion, the blood. His eyes snapped open to find himself in a chamber unlike anything from human technology. The walls curved around him in organic shapes that seemed to breathe, pulsing with soft bioluminescent patterns. He was indeed floating, suspended in a translucent gel that supported his body, while tiny lights moved through the medium like living stars. Medical equipment surrounded the chamber, but it was so advanced that it looked more like art than machinery. "You are awake." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking perfect English without any mechanical translation artifacts. Marcus turned his head, and there she was, the Cytherian princess, very much alive, standing beside his healing chamber. She looked completely different from when he'd found her dying. Her skin glowed with health, shimmering between silver and pearl in the chamber's soft light. She wore new robes, deep blue fabric that seemed to contain entire galaxies within its weave. "You're alive," Marcus said, his voice coming out as a whisper through the chamber's communication system. "Because of you," she replied. "Because of your blood. Your sacrifice." As Marcus became more alert, he noticed other figures in the chamber. Tall Cytherians in elaborate robes, their faces marked with intricate tattoos that seemed to move and shift. They watched him with expressions he couldn't read, but there was something in their posture that suggested reverence rather than hostility. "Where am I?" Marcus asked. "Aboard the Eternal Dawn," the princess replied. "My personal vessel. We retrieved you after the battle ended." "The battle?" Marcus tried to sit up, but the gel held him gently in place. "What happened? Did we win? Did you win?" The princess exchanged glances with her attendants. When she looked back at Marcus, her expression was complex. "The battle ended in ways no one expected. Your command structure received word that Princess Zelanya of the First Blood had been rescued by a human soldier, a human who gave his own blood to save her life. Zelanya. So that was her name. My people demanded proof," she continued. "They thought it was a human trick, a lie to gain tactical advantage. But when they analyzed the medical data from my healing..." She paused, as if struggling with how to explain. Marcus Chen of Earth, What you did should have been impossible. Human blood and Cytherian blood are completely incompatible. They come from different evolutionary trees, different genetic structures entirely. By every law of biology, we know your blood should have killed me in minutes. Marcus stared at her. But it didn't. No, Zelanya said, moving closer to the chamber. It saved me. More than that, it changed me. And according to the medical analysis, it changed you as well. One of the robed attendants stepped forward, speaking in rapid Cytherian. Zelanya listened, then nodded. High Healer Vorthak wishes to show you something. May we activate the chamber's display system? Marcus nodded, and suddenly the gel around him filled with holographic projections. He saw molecular structures, genetic sequences, complex biological processes that meant nothing to him but clearly meant everything to the Cytherians watching. This is your blood, Zelanya explained, gesturing to one set of structures. And this is mine, as they were before the transfusion. The displays were completely different, like comparing water to starlight. And this, she said as new projections appeared, is what happened when they mixed. Marcus watched in fascination as the holographic molecules seemed to dance together, human and alien genetic material, combining in ways that defied everything he thought he knew about biology. Instead of rejecting each other, the two blood types had merged, creating something entirely new. The High Healer believes this proves something our oldest legends speak of, Zelanya said. That long ago, before either of our species reached the stars, we shared a common origin. Not just life from the same cosmic seeds, but actual biological connection. The idea was staggering. Marcus had grown up thinking of aliens as completely foreign, as different from humans as rocks from water. But if what Zelanya was saying was true, there's more, she continued. The changes in our blood don't just prove ancient connection. They've created new possibilities. Enhanced healing, increased resistance to disease, improved cellular regeneration. We've both been changed by what you did, Marcus. Made stronger. Marcus finally understood why the robed Cytherians were looking at him with such intensity. This could change everything, he said. It already has, Zelanya replied. 3 hours after the transfusion data reached both our command structures, an armistice was declared. Not a ceasefire, Marcus. An armistice. The first step toward ending this war. The implications hit Marcus like a physical force. His simple act of mercy, his decision to save one dying person, had somehow stopped a war that had claimed millions of lives. It didn't seem possible. But there are those on both sides who don't want this to end, Zelanya continued, her expression growing serious. Humans who see the war as necessary for species survival. Cytherians who believe your people are too violent, too primitive to coexist with. They're already working to undermine the armistice. As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The chamber's displays immediately switched to tactical information, showing multiple vessels approaching at high speed. Marcus recognized the sensor signatures, human ships, but not Federation military. These were from the Colonial Independence Movement, the radical faction that wanted to continue the war until every Cytherian was dead. They found us, one of the attendants said in accented English. Zelanya's hands moved quickly over control surfaces that appeared in the air around her. They're broadcasting surrender demands. They want both of us turned over to human military authorities. For what? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. You for treason, Zelanya replied grimly. Me for war crimes. They have no intention of honoring any armistice. The ship shook as weapons fire impacted its shields. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Marcus could see crew members rushing to battle stations. But these weren't warriors. They were scientists, healers, diplomats. The Eternal Dawn was a research vessel, not a warship. "We can't fight them," Marcus said. "You need to surrender me. Maybe that will be enough." Zelanya turned to face him, and her eyes blazed with an intensity that reminded Marcus she was royalty, accustomed to command. "Absolutely not. What you did saved my life and opened a path to peace. I will not hand you over to those who would destroy that chance." "Then what do we do?" Before Zelanya could answer, a new voice filled the chamber. It was speaking Cytherian. But Marcus's blood somehow let him understand it perfectly, another side effect of the transfusion. "This is Admiral Thexhai of the Cytherian Third Fleet. Unknown vessels, you are in violation of the newly established neutral zone. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Marcus felt a moment of hope, but it died quickly as more alarms sounded. The human ships weren't retreating. If anything, they were accelerating their attack. "They're targeting our engines," one of the crew reported. "They want to disable us, not destroy us." "They want us alive for a public trial," Zelanya said bitterly. "To prove that collaboration with humans is betrayal, that peace is impossible." The ship shuddered again, and Marcus made a decision. "Release me from this chamber. I can fight." "You're still healing," Zelanya protested. "The biological changes are ongoing. Removing you now could be dangerous." "More dangerous than letting them capture us?" Zelanya hesitated, then nodded to the high healer. The chamber began draining, and Marcus felt gravity slowly reassert itself. As the last of the healing gel drained away, he stood carefully, testing his balance. He felt different, stronger, more alert. Whatever the blood transfusion had done to him, it hadn't made him weaker. "Your weapons and armor are here," Zelanya said, gesturing to a nearby alcove where his gear had been cleaned and repaired. "But Marcus, there are 12 ships out there. Even with Cytherian support arriving, this is going to be a difficult fight." Marcus began suiting up, his hands moving automatically through the familiar routine. "Maybe. But I didn't survive 3 days on Zephyria Prime by giving up when things looked bad." As he sealed his helmet and checked his weapon systems, Marcus caught sight of himself in a reflective surface. He looked the same, but there was something different in his eyes, something that spoke of changes deeper than just enhanced blood chemistry. "There's something else you should know," Zelanya said as weapon fire continued to impact the ship's shields. "The blood bond between us, it's created more than just biological changes. I can sense your thoughts, your emotions, and I believe you can sense mine." Marcus paused, realizing she was right. He could feel her presence at the edge of his consciousness, her determination, her fear for her people, her hope for peace. It was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "Is that normal for your people?" he asked. "No," Zelanya replied. "This is something entirely new, another sign that what we've become is unprecedented." The ship rocked again, more violently this time. Through the chamber's windows, Marcus could see the human ships closing in, their weapons charging for what looked like a final assault. In the distance, Cytherian vessels were approaching rapidly, but they might not arrive in time. Marcus checked his weapon one last time and looked at Zelanya. "Ready?" She nodded, her own weapon, something that looked like controlled lightning in the shape of a staff, crackling with energy. "Let's go save the future." Together, the human soldier and the alien princess headed for the ship's defense stations, carrying with them the hopes of 2 species and the weight of a peace that might die before it could truly begin. Behind them, the high healer and his attendants continued their work, analyzing the miraculous blood that had changed everything. The battle for the future was about to begin, and it would be fought not just with weapons, but with the proof that even the most different beings in the universe could find common ground, literally in their very blood. When a human warrior gave his blood to save a dying alien princess. Third document. The bridge of the eternal dawn was chaos controlled by desperate purpose. Marcus had fought in space battles before, but never from the bridge of an alien vessel, and never with stakes this high. Around him, Catherian crew members moved with fluid precision, their hands dancing over control surfaces that appeared and disappeared like living light. Zelanya stood at the center of it all, her presence commanding despite her youth. The blood bond between them let Marcus feel her emotions. Determination mixed with fear, hope struggling against despair. She was carrying the weight of two civilizations on her shoulders. "Shields at 60%, one of the crew reported. "The human vessels are maintaining formation, trying to box us in." Marcus studied the tactical display floating in the air between them. The colonial independence movement ships were older models, but they were numerous and well-armed. Worse, they knew human tactics better than the Catherians did. "They're hurting us," Marcus said. "Trying to push us into a position where the Catherian fleet can't protect us without risking a larger engagement." Zelanya glanced at him. "Can you predict their next move?" Through their bond, Marcus could feel her trust in him, her hope that his human perspective might provide an advantage. It was overwhelming and humbling at the same time. "They'll try to disable our engines next," Marcus said. "Force us to drift while they board. They want us alive for their propaganda." "Then we don't let them disable us," Zelanya replied. She turned to her crew. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers and charge the quantum resonance array." "Princess," one of the older crew members protested. "The resonance array is experimental. Using it could damage the ship. Not using it will definitely result in capture," Zelanya replied firmly. "Proceed." Marcus felt the ship's power systems surge as energy was redirected to something he didn't understand. Through the bridge's transparent sections, he could see space itself beginning to shimmer around the Eternal Dawn's hull. "What does the resonance array do?" he asked. "It manipulates local space-time," Zelanya explained. "Creates pockets of accelerated time around the ship. We move faster while everything else appears to slow down." The implications were staggering. Marcus had heard rumors that the Catherians possessed advanced physics technologies, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. "How is that possible?" "The same way your blood was able to save my life," Zelanya said. "Some things are possible even when they shouldn't be." The human ships opened fire again, but as the resonance array activated, their laser blasts seemed to crawl through space like slow-moving fireflies. The Eternal Dawn twisted between them with impossible grace, its enhanced time field allowing maneuvers that would have been suicide at normal speed. But Marcus could see the strain on Zelanya's face, feel it through their bond. The array was drawing enormous amounts of energy, and using it was exhausting for the operators who had to maintain the temporal calculations. "We can't keep this up forever," Marcus said. "We don't need to," Zelanya replied. "Just until—" Space around them exploded into light as the Catherian Third Fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Admiral Thexhi's command ship was a magnificent sight, easily twice the size of any human vessel, its hull covered in the same iridescent patterns that decorated all Catherian technology. But it wasn't alone. A dozen other ships materialized around it, their weapons already charged. Marcus felt a moment of relief, but it died quickly as he saw the human response. The colonial independence movement ships weren't retreating. Instead, they were forming a defensive screen around the Eternal Dawn, using it as a shield between themselves and the Catherian fleet. "Clever," Marcus muttered. "They know the Admiral won't risk hitting us." The bridge's communication system crackled to life. "This is Admiral Thexhi to the Princess Zelanya. Are you unharmed?" "We are intact, Admiral," Zelanya replied. "But the human extremists are using us as cover. They believe you will not fire through our position." "They are correct," the Admiral replied grimly. "Princess, we need you to break free of their formation. But be warned, more human ships are approaching. It appears this was planned as more than a simple capture mission." Marcus's blood ran cold as new contacts appeared on the tactical display. These weren't just colonial independence ships. He recognized the signatures of Terran Federation vessels, including at least 3 heavy cruisers. "They're setting you up," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. "The extremists contacted the Federation military, told them you'd captured me. Now both sides think this is an act of war." Zelania's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. "If my fleet fires on human ships to protect us, it becomes proof that the armistice was a deception. If we're captured, they can claim I was trying to extract military secrets from you. And if we're killed in the crossfire," Marcus added, "both sides can blame the other. Perfect excuse to restart the war." Through their bond, Marcus felt Zelania's anguish. She had worked her entire life for peace between their species, had risked everything to build bridges across the gap of mutual hatred. Now her own survival might trigger the very war she'd tried to prevent. But Marcus also felt something else through the bond. His own determination reflecting back at him, amplified by Zelania's royal training and enhanced by whatever the blood transfusion had done to them both. They weren't just going to be victims of someone else's plot. "There's another option," Marcus said. "What do you mean?" Marcus was already moving toward the bridge's communication station. "Open a channel, all frequencies, maximum broadcast power. I want everyone to hear this." "Marcus, what are you—" "Trust me," he said, and through their bond, she felt the depth of his conviction. "Please." Zelania nodded to her communications officer. "All frequencies open, maximum power." Marcus took a deep breath, aware that what he said next would reach every ship in the battle, every command center for light years around, every politician and general who would decide the fate of both species. "This is Sergeant Marcus Chen of the Terran Federation Marine Corps," he began. "3 days ago, I found a dying Catherian woman and made a choice to save her life. I didn't know she was a princess. I didn't know our blood was compatible. I didn't know it would change everything. I just saw someone who needed help, and I helped." Around him, the bridge had gone completely silent. Even the crew members who didn't speak English seemed to understand the importance of what was happening. "Now there are people on both sides trying to use what happened as an excuse to restart this war," Marcus continued. "They want you to believe that cooperation between humans and Catherians is impossible, that we're too different to coexist. But I'm here to tell you that's wrong." Marcus paused, feeling Zelania's emotions through their bond. Hope, determination, and something that might have been love for her people, for his people, for the possibility of peace. "The blood tests don't lie," Marcus said. "Human and Catherian biology are compatible in ways we never imagined. That means we share common origins, common potential. We're not enemies by nature. We're family that's been separated so long we forgot we were related." On the tactical display, Marcus could see that the Federation ships were slowing their approach. Someone was listening. "Princess Zelania of the First Blood risked her life to prove that peace was possible," Marcus continued. "I risked mine because I believed the same thing. We've both been changed by what happened, connected in ways that prove our species can work together." Marcus looked at Zelania, seeing tears in her shifting eyes. Through their bond, he felt her gratitude, her amazement that a human soldier would risk everything to defend not just her, but the very concept of peace. "So here's what's going to happen," Marcus said, his voice gaining strength. "Princess Zelania and I are going to surrender ourselves to joint custody. Equal representation from both militaries. We'll submit to any tests, answer any questions, prove that what happened was real. But in return, you're going to honor the armistice. You're going to give peace a chance." The communication channel erupted with responses. Federation commanders demanding clarification, Catherian officers seeking orders, colonial independence leaders screaming about betrayal. But underneath the chaos, Marcus could hear something else, voices calling for calm, for investigation, for the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this insane plan might actually work. Admiral Thexhigh's voice cut through the noise. "Princess, the Federation Admiral Morrison wishes to speak with you directly." A new voice joined the channel, speaking carefully controlled English. "Princess Zelanya, this is Admiral Morrison of the Federation Third Fleet. I've reviewed the preliminary medical data transmitted during the armistice negotiations. If what it suggests is true, then this matter requires investigation, not warfare." "I agree completely, Admiral," Zelanya replied. "Sergeant Chen and I are prepared to submit to joint investigation, provided it's conducted with the goal of understanding, not punishment." "And provided the armistice holds during the investigation," Marcus added. There was a long pause. Marcus could feel the weight of history balancing on this moment, the future of two civilizations hanging in the balance of one human admiral's decision. "Agreed," Admiral Morrison said finally. "Both fleets will maintain position. A joint investigation team will be assembled, and the armistice will hold." The colonial independence ships immediately began broadcasting protests, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Faced with both Federation and Cytherian fleets, they had no choice but to withdraw. As the immediate crisis passed, Marcus felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The enhanced abilities from the blood transfusion had sustained him through the battle, but now the strain was catching up. "It's over," Zelanya said, moving to support him as he swayed. "No," Marcus replied, looking out at the mixed fleet of human and Cytherian vessels maintaining their careful distance. "This is just the beginning." 3 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Joint Research Station that had been built at the edge of the neutral zone. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from both fleets working together, their crews sharing technology and knowledge that had been secrets just weeks before. The investigation had confirmed everything the medical scans had suggested. Human and Cytherian DNA shared common markers that suggested both species had been seeded by the same ancient civilization millions of years ago. The blood compatibility wasn't a miracle. It was proof of family ties that stretched back to the dawn of galactic civilization. More importantly, the enhanced abilities that Marcus and Zelanya had developed were reproducible. Volunteers from both species had undergone controlled transfusion procedures, gaining increased healing, enhanced intelligence, and most remarkably, limited telepathic connections that made true understanding between the species possible for the first time. "The first mixed settlement will be established next month," Zelanya said, joining Marcus at the window. She moved differently now, with the enhanced grace that came from their shared enhancement. 1,000 volunteers from each species, working together to build something new. Marcus nodded, feeling her contentment through their bond. It had taken time to adjust to the constant awareness of each other's emotions, but now he couldn't imagine life without it. Through Zelanya, he experienced the universe with Cytherian senses that could perceive beauty in ways human eyes never could. Through him, she had gained access to human determination and adaptability that had helped her navigate the political challenges of building peace. "Any regrets?" Zelanya asked. Marcus thought about it seriously. His military career was over. You couldn't return to normal service after becoming the most famous human in the galaxy. His family on Earth had struggled to understand why he'd risked everything for an alien. Some humans still considered him a traitor, just as some Cytherians saw Zelanya as naive for trusting the violent humans. But when he looked out at the ships working together, at the crews sharing meals and stories and dreams of a future neither species could build alone, Marcus knew he'd made the right choice. "None," he said. "You?" Zelanya smiled, the expression made more beautiful by the way her enhanced features caught the starlight. I regret only that it took a war to bring us together. Through their bond, Marcus felt her deeper meaning. They had become more than allies, more than friends. The blood they shared had created a connection that transcended species, a love that was both personal and symbolic of everything their peoples could become together. "The war's over," Marcus said, taking her hand. "Now we build something better." Outside the observation deck, human and Cytherian ships continued their work, laying the foundation for a future where the words alien and enemy would become obsolete. It had started with one human's decision to save one dying alien, and it had changed the galaxy. Sometimes the most important choices were the ones that made the least sense. Sometimes love was stronger than logic, hope more powerful than hatred. And sometimes, when you were willing to give your blood for someone else's life, you discovered that you weren't so different after all. The stars watched over them all, silent witnesses to the birth of something unprecedented. Two species becoming one, connected by blood, bonded by choice, united in the endless adventure of exploring the cosmos together.